Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Creative Mind Podcast. I'm your host, Byron Craig, and today you are in for a world-class treat. Today we have a James Beard Award nominated chef, best chef. He was nominated for best chef in California. He is the owner of Poppy and Seed in Anaheim, California. He's the owner of Poppy and Rose in downtown in LA in the Flower District. He's done so many Food Network shows I can't even count, and he's killed it on each and every one of them. However, the coolest thing about him, he is my cousin from my mother's side. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for my cousin, Chef Michael Reed.
Thank you for having me, brother. It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, I appreciate you. I'm grateful that you would even take time out of your busy chef schedule to do this in the chef coat.
Getting ready for dinner service, you know.
Oh, dude. So I that's why I said we're not gonna take up too much of your time, but I'm grateful that you had the time to do it now. Man, let's just get into this thing, man. Tell everybody about you, like your journey, like your culinary journey.
Yeah, so I was going to school at UC Santa Barbara as an econ major. I was a track and field athlete and did long distances and cross country. I broke my foot my junior year and I literally pivoted. I really was in love with food already, cooking for my teammates all the way from high school to college, and just found that to be my secondary passage. And so when my foot broke, I was like, I really don't like econ. Econ's not that fun. It's not that entertaining. There's not I wasn't a great student in school. I was at Santa Barbara, which is a huge party school, and kind of fell down that rabbit hole. And so I was like, let's go to culinary school. And luckily enough, the JC there had a culinary program, really good quality teachers there. And so I just went there for like a year, started working at random places like a country club out there, a vegan vegetarian restaurant, and then went to a winery, and that had a kosher aspect to it. And really just got my chops there. And I was like, okay, I still want to go to school, but I want to go to the best school. So I ended up going to the Culinary Institute of America in upstate New York, which was like the number one culinary school in the United States. And so I was originally signed up for their 3-year program. I was going to end up getting a BS from them. And after the first year, I was like, why am I here again? What am I doing in culinary school after working for these actually legit chefs? And I was like on repeat of what I already did at City College. And so I was like talking to my mom, and she's like, you need the piece of paper, to get that legitimacy, because, she's a school teacher. So it's all about education, get the fundamentals. And I was like, but I learned everything working for other people. And I was like staging at a 1 Michelin star rated restaurant in Manhattan at the time. That was like a Danny Myers restaurant, Gabriel Khrushchev, legit chef. And I was just like, I'm having so much fun here. Do I really have to go back to school? But I opted to finish out the program. I cut it short and only did the 2-year program and got an associate's degree in culinary arts from the CIA. But when I was in New York, I just fell in love with fine dining. And so I got a little too cold for a Cali boy and moved after it snowed again for the 3rd time that I was there. And I was like, okay, we're going to land in LA, even though I didn't really love LA as a city. But it was like going back to California, where are you going to cook, where there's Michelin star chefs and things like that. So I just bounced around high-end restaurants in LA, like Sona, which was a 1 Michelin, worked at Osteria Mozza, which is Nancy Silverton, 1 Michelin. And I was on track to become her sous chef at that time. Wow. And I was like, this is where I want to be. I love the food. I love the style. Nancy is great. And I really was like ready to go, because once you sign up to be a sous chef, you're like, you sell your soul.
Really?
You don't have part-time jobs. You don't do stuff on the side. It's basically, if they say they need you at 6 a.m. till 2:00 at night, you just there. So I understood the assignment. And while I was working for her as an hourly, I still had a part-time job. So I was working 5 a.m. anyway till 2:30 in the afternoon at a catering company, and then going to do dinner service till 1:00 at night. And I was like, I'm fine with the hours. And then she just told me what I would make. And I was like, is there any wiggle room for that? And unfortunately, there wasn't really much wiggle room. And I was like, unfortunately, I can't do that. That's a pay cut. Yes, the title is important to me because you're trying to grow your career, and titles are the hierarchy of the kitchen. And so I was like, unfortunately, I can't do it. And so I just stuck around for like another 2 months while they tried to find a replacement for me. And I left in good graces. And, 2 months later, she calls me. I'm only 26 at the time. And she says she has a friend that's up the street from Oscar Motsu that's looking for an executive chef. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I feel confident in my abilities. And so I interviewed, got the job. And so at 26 became an executive chef, which is way too young. Way too young. I was there for 2.5 years. And from everyone's like, you learn what you can from other people. And then at a certain point, you're ready to go. I was still in that. I still needed to learn. So I was learning everything firsthand in the moment as an executive chef, running a team for the first time by myself, and so I had a lot of growing pains. We got decent reviews from Jonathan Gold and everything like that. And the restaurant was getting busier, but 26 and dealing with, you're not in control of your own destiny because you don't write the checks was a huge problem for me. And so after 2.5 years, I was like, look I have brought in more money through the back door because at that point I had connections to some well-off people in Santa Monica and the Palisades. And so I was doing outside catering out the back of the kitchen. I was writing over the checks. And when I added up those checks in for 5 months, I was like, I just paid my entire salary in 5 months.
Wow.
To this lady. And I was just like, this is crazy. And so, she went on one of her little tangents, and I was just like, you know what? This is it. Here's the check for the last catering event. I'm taking all the food and I'm out. And so then I started my catering company right there and then, out of the blue. Didn't have a name for it. Didn't have business cards. All I knew, I was going to go feed 200 people in this very nice house on the proper side of Santa Monica. And I was going to figure out how to turn that into a business. And so that turned out to be Real Food, which is our catering company that started in Santa Monica. That's just done some wild red carpets, penthouse parties at the W Hotel and residencies, private chefing for Gwen Stefani. It's just it's done all kinds of crazy things that you, as a chef, I would never be like, oh yeah, that's my goal. And you're just you got to meet Moby and all these Adrian Ginrays and all these celebrities in Hollywood. And it's just that was really cool. And so we've maintained that throughout the time. And then it got to the point where it outgrew a live work loft that we had in Santa Monica. And so we were like, I need a commercial kitchen. We're doing too much volume. We had to get into something else that was actually commercial. And so in the search for that, we found out that LA is very expensive when you're talking about opening restaurants and being in nice neighborhoods and things like that. So we stumbled upon where Poppy and Rose is because the landlord didn't know what he had. It was a gem in the rough. It was neon colors when we took it over. It's 2 blocks from Skid Row in downtown LA. But during the daytime, it opens up into the flower market at 2 a.m. to 12 o'clock. And it's just hustling, bustling. It smells so beautiful in there. Cut flowers, you name it. It's just gorgeous. And so we're like, okay, cool. We'll open a brunch restaurant. We'll name it Poppy and Rose because I opened it with another chef friend of mine, Ryan Lehman, and he's from Georgia. And so we're like, flower market. I'm from California. You're from Georgia. So Poppy and Rose are the 2 state flowers for those 2 states. Hence Poppy and Rose and the flower market. And so, we didn't expect it to be a moneymaker or that popular. And we're like, it's a brunch restaurant and they're close to Skid Row. It's not going to do anything. And so we didn't even open on Sunday, which, brunch is considered nowadays. Brunch is Saturday and Sundays. We didn't open originally on Sundays. We were closed on Sundays because I would be out doing catering events Saturday night. And I'd be like, I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. to come cook brunch. Not going to do it. I'll come to the restaurant and clean up at 12 o'clock from the catering event and get reset for the next week. But we weren't open originally. And then, people are just knocking on the window. Hey, are you open? Are you open? And you're 20, 30, 40 people are knocking on the window. I'm like, okay, fine. I guess we need to open for brunch. And then all of a sudden you saw all the accolades, best fried chicken and waffles, best pancakes, best this, best that. And it's all of a
Yeah.
sudden like, oh, this restaurant turned into its own entity and monstrosity that just all of a sudden cranked out 400 covers in a short period of time on a Saturday and Sunday. And you're just like, oh, you're a
Wow.
restaurateur now.
Yep.
And that was all by 30. And you're just like, okay, wow, that's a fast turnaround. So had the catering company going, had opened and built out the restaurant in downtown LA for Poppy and Rose. And then I signed a contract to be the executive chef of the Standard Hotel in West Hollywood. So I was
Wow.
running three different things, a hotel that was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That was an iconic gym in West Hollywood. And also it's like, this is great. This is fun. Being in my 30s are great. I got that young energy,
Yep.
you know, where I could just keep pushing and grinding. And it was fun, you know. And then I just kind of, after leaving the Standard after a couple of years, did independent work for small restaurants in Santa Monica. Right before the pandemic, I was running in another hotel in Beverly Hills and a hotel in Koreatown at the same time, while doing catering and the restaurant downtown.
Jeez.
So it's just like I was hitting everything. I was like busy. And so the pandemic was a reality check at that point because I shut both hotels down. My wife just joined the team officially and left her high-paying salary as a controller for a fashion company and was taking over the front of the house and accounting for the restaurant at that time. And it was like 2 months before the pandemic. And we're like, yeah, we're fine. We're good. And then pandemic hit. And I closed the hotels. And then it was just us at Poppy and Rose. And it was just like, okay, Here we go. Let's see if we can survive the pandemic. And we actually thrived as being a Black-owned business, woman-owned business. We really thrived through the pandemic, and we really saw the love and support from the neighborhood as we tried to figure out where are we packaging to go and how is that working for us? Can we build a patio on the roof and get people to come outside towards the tail end of the pandemic? But it did what it was supposed to do. It served the community in the best ability that we could, and when we still put out high quality food. And then, you know, shortly after that, we decided to buy a house or open another restaurant. Masochists that we are. We opted to not buy a house because we already had a house out in Orange County that we were staying at with Queen's parents. And so we were like, fine, open a restaurant. And we're like, you're not going to be able to find a restaurant because LA is expensive, even though restaurants were closing left and right during the pandemic. The rents were still outrageous, and you can't find a restaurant that usually has a patio in LA. And so we started searching in Orange County that has a little bit more room, a little bit more affordable blueprint that we could open up in. And so we found this beautiful space called Poppy and Seed that has a huge outdoor patio that has garden space that, you know, it's a greenhouse. It is open air. So you can open up 4 sides of the building. So it's indoor, outdoor, and it just worked right after the pandemic and gave everyone that comfort level that we were still looking for, being like, I want to be close to you, but I don't want to be that close. And so, you know, it's been around for 3.5 years now. And, you know, year one, we we're on the top 10 list for best new restaurants for Orange County that year. The year after that, got us into the James Beard for the best chef of the West. We got added onto the Michelin guide. So it's we've been taking all the right steps to continue the high quality of food that we're putting out and service that we provide here. And chasing, it's not the end all be all to be we got to get a Michelin star. If it happens, it happens. It's more or less, we treat this like my playground and where I get to showcase all those 20 plus years of working for other chefs, developing my palate, and just having fun as a chef. And we own this. So now I get to do whatever I want. When I get tired of making something, it changes. If we don't like the way service is running, we change it to give the guest a better experience. And it's just really quick.
I love that. That's amazing. Like 20 years, you just covered in like 10 minutes a very long, like you had a lot of stuff. Like you did a lot of stuff. Man, how, like, I've always been curious when chefs are the heads of multiple different restaurants. How, I mean, obviously you can't be in three restaurants at the same time. Like, do you appoint like staff,
No.
like another executive chef or?
So like for us, it was always I always had sous chefs, and
Okay.
they would either some of them I would inherit. A lot of them were people that had been working with me in a long time that had understood like the style of food I put up, the pace that we run at, and I was able to like move people around from, hey, you work for me at Poppy and Rose, let's go over here and do this now. Because you've outgrown that space,
Mm-hmm.
and we reappoint someone else into that role that they left. And so like I've had sous chefs that have been with me for about 12 years, 10
Wow.
years. The two people that run downtown right now have been there for 8 and 6 years.
Jeez.
So we really try and work on fostering, like, we don't try and micromanage our staff. We try and give you that autonomy and independence. As long as you're upholding our standards and ethos as a brand and business, then we just let you ride.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would hit when everything was perfect. I would hit every place in one day, but it wasn't. I was there for and I would be there for like 2 hours. Let me solve some stuff, show you something really quick, move on to the next one, and repeat, and then end up my day wherever was the bigger one for the events or who had the busier service, and run that, or whoever was short staffed. But yeah, it was crazy. My wife
That's
did not love me. My wife
I,
loved me, but she was like, you're crazy. Like you leave before I do. You come home after I do. And so, it was stressful and taxing, but it was what we're in that early 30s, that young grind of being like, we're at the
yeah.
pinnacle of our career and we're really chasing our dreams and pushing hard. We didn't have a daughter at that point. So it was just like
Right.
the two of us, and it was easy to be like, okay, we're take our 10-day vacation every year. We're going to do little trips here and there. And we would just work, work, work. And then
Yeah.
once we had Mackenzie, it was all like, okay, prioritize, refocus. Your family unit is now changing. There's a little one that needs you. And so we started refocusing our focus on how do we control our own destiny.
Yeah. Now, how's that family dynamic work? Like, it's different because you're always constantly doing, like, whether you're at Poppy and Seed or you're having to like do proof of concept of different foods and testing and everything. Like, how does that work? I mean, Queenie's a boss in her own right. She's like big boss. But like, how does that work? I mean, because obviously your restaurant's open late till what, 10, 11?
Yep. Like usually like 10, 11 o'clock, we're like shutting down, getting out. But like for our relationship is really based on like mutual respect, because where we met was at the Standard. We were at a working relationship before we started dating. And so we understand the lanes that we have. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we're both creatives. And so we come together when it's like, let's design something. Let's talk about like the aesthetics or the mantras that we instill in our staff. And really like I'll do design, build out, menu creations, executing the kitchen. She runs all the admin, financials, all the operating systems, and then does the wine pairings and double checks all the tasting of the food, as she is a beautiful taste tester. And her palate has got refined over the 7 years that we've been married. And so it's like we stay in our lanes and
Yeah.
we kind of come together and then we go like this. So it's like we never actually collide and be like stepping on each other's toes. We understand that mutual respect.
For sure. How does it, I mean, when it comes to how do you balance that with, I mean, because I know there's chefs out there. How do you balance that with, taking care of your daughter? And I mean, because obviously, I mean, you can't, like, I guess my real question is, how is it that you can be open really late and then also still spend time with, your daughter? Because she's growing up. She's awesome. But she's growing up and, she obviously wants to spend time with her dad and spend time with her mom. And
Yeah, so like the lucky thing that we started to be able to do downtown, I don't really have to get involved with that much anymore. It kind of is self-operating now that it's 11 years old almost. And then it's just like for us, it's like at the end of the day, if it's something for Mackenzie, whether it's a musical, tennis practice, recitals, we as a family unit, it's the two of us for Queenie and myself, but then we have live-in grandparents, which has
Hmm.
been a world of difference. So like on the nights where we both have to be out, it's not like, hey, did you get the babysitter to take Mackenzie to tennis practice, get her fed, do homework and all that stuff? It's grandma or granddad, so it's
Yeah.
like we have that comfortability of saying, that she's always getting the love and attention that she needs.
Hmm.
And then, like this last trip that we just came back from, yes, I got flown out to New York to do a show for the Food Network, but we turned it into a family trip. So all of a sudden
Oh,
she got to
nice.
be the first time that she got to actually be like, understand, where does dad go when he says, hey, I got to go do a TV show? She was actually in the audience with Queenie watching us for the first time, which was really cool in New York. And then after we did that for one day, all of a sudden we did another 5 days in Manhattan where it's like museum, 2 Broadway plays. And it's just like, here's a life experience that you get to see what I got to do, and you got to go have fun with us. So we like, instead of so many Christmas presents, it's always like giving the gift of memories and experiences that we're trying to give to her now. Um,
Of course.
and we just prioritize it, like at the end of the day, it's a restaurant. Yes, it can survive a day or a week without me. So it's like, it's not the end all be all.
Yeah. I know. I love the show Chef's Table. So watching those chefs be in their own worlds often is really, it's really weird because I'm like, how do you prioritize yourself like without you being like a tyrant? Because what's it? Not Tim Keller, because Tim Keller owns the French Laundry. Tim Haig in Germany. He's like he's brutal with his like staff, and I'm like, is
Yeah.
that really
Yeah.
necessary?
Look, it's an older mentality. I think, like even when I was growing young in my culinary career, it was like that. That's the kitchens that I grew up in that were that high end, meticulous, poignant, like flawless service, like execute high, one Michelin, was crazy. And then, like you saw culinary schools like the Cordon Bleu getting shut down because, it wasn't doing what it was supposed to. Kids didn't have that avenue of education anymore. And so
Yeah.
like the demographic of chefs that we hire, they're a lot softer. They're they're special. And so, like the way we treat our staff, it's never about diminishing who you are as a person. We want you to be yourself and unique, and bring your creativity to the team. And so it's like, we don't yell, we don't scream, we don't throw things. It's high, it's intense, but we hold standards and we correct you when you're wrong. We praise you when you're right. But it's not like, I don't know, punching people, throwing shit. That shit
Yeah.
went out the door a decade ago. And if you're doing that now, you probably don't have a restaurant anymore.
I honestly, I'd be surprised. I'd be really surprised if someone wasn't doing that. I mean, I can see your concept. I mean, I always just joke around like I'm like everybody in California is super soft. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
some of them,
Some okay, yeah, you're right. Some, not
some.
you, not you, but like
No,
others.
no,
Like
yeah, you know.
we know you, alpha male. Um, man, how did like I have so many questions. We were talking earlier before we started about there was an article written last year about you and Queenie opening a third restaurant somewhere like near coastal water, and
Mhm.
you were explaining to me that it right now it's so hard with the way that the government is in California to open a restaurant. Why?
It's like when you decide to give a fast food worker $20 an hour and try and make that supposedly a livable income or a more stable job, it basically they destroyed what people think of like restaurants. Like, come work for me. I'm not McDonald's or a major chain that can afford $20 an hour for someone that's unskilled. I'll
Yeah.
pay $20 for someone that's highly skilled that can actually do things. But to say you're paying someone $20 an hour to flip a hamburger on a grill is crazy. And so they basically started destroying the market as far as like, well, I can go work at a fast food restaurant and get paid $20 an hour. So now there's a worker shortage, especially after the pandemic. It's just people left the industry because, so many restaurants closed. It's just, they don't write the laws in our favor, as far as like, they wanted us to be the cops of like, did you get your COVID vaccine? And you can't come into our restaurant and sit inside if you're not vaccinated. And I'm like, why is that our job to be the vaccination police and figure out if they're vaccinated or not? But if they dump it on us, the minimum wage is just crazy high and the skill is super low. And they're still like, they can bounce around really easy. Like, hey, I'll pay you this, and then walk up the street and someone will like, I'm really short staffed, so I'll pay you $22 an hour. So it's like we're fighting with each other over the same workforce, which is just giving them the power and entitlement to be like, well, I can just demand whatever I want. I'm like, you kind of can, but you can't. And you're not that good of an employee. You show up late, you're not that skilled. So no love lost when you do leave. And then it's just like the cost of goods in general, is just like, we got our quotes for the build out and raw cost is like $3.3 million in a 4,000 square foot space. 4,000 square feet that we're going to build out is raw cost, not including tables, chairs, plates, silver, glassware, opening inventory, salary coverage for the first year. That's just putting up walls and dropping equipment in with nothing else. 3.3 million. And we're like, let's not do this. Let's not really fucking drop that much money. And at the end of this lease, we have zero control. We have 10 years on it, plus the first right of refusal and things like that. But it's like our lease goes up every year.
Damn.
And so at the end of the day, if you're going to get 3.3 million, go buy a property, open your own restaurant, have the equity you're looking for. So then technically when you go, hey, let's open a fourth, it's not a question of like, can we get a loan from a bank? No, we have a physical land asset for that 3.3, and potentially leverage that to go get the fourth, fifth, sixth concept off versus being like, oh, we dropped 3.3, almost $5 million at the end of the day to open a restaurant that we have zero control over, even though it's in prime location and it would be great. Proof of concept is there. We pitched it to several people that wanted to invest in it. And it's a beautiful concept. Restaurant's ready to go. It could be built out, but it's not, as a family, it doesn't make sense to be tied into something that we can't pass down to like McKinsey in the next 10 years. I mean, like, you own the land of this building. So even if you decide to become an astronaut or something else, you still own this versus, you could keep running the restaurant that we left you and keep signing the leases every year. So, I think as a family, we're making that conscious decision. How do we make that generational what actually stick versus signing that lease?
That makes a whole bunch more sense now. Because, dude, I would much rather, that's what I want to do with my company. I want to buy a bunch of buildings around the world just to have the buildings. I don't care about, the office space in it. I just want the building itself. Just because, God ain't making no more land. So
He's really not.
We got what we got. So I'm going to take as much as I can get. Seriously. But that's dope, man. Like, I hope that it works out, that y'all are able to buy a building, land somewhere, and then, have that.
That's the goal.
That big goals. Our family, we got big goals. We a big goal kind of family.
You got to dream big, like, yes, it would be nice to own a farm, have a little B&B on there, restaurant, but it's like, you're still servicing the community, like getting farmland and actually farming it would be instrumental of like still maintaining some of the United States, like idea of like we grow food. We don't really grow our own food anymore. We export, import more of anything and everything's pre-processed. So it's like the idea of having a farm to actually grow things and put it onto the food menu is it would be really exciting. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen in California just because it's expensive to buy that land. So, but
Yeah.
there's other parts of the United States that we've been looking at to branch out to and kind of develop a concept.
Ooh, is one of them Dallas, Texas?
Texas is on the map. It is on the map.
Please come to
So
Dallas. I one of my goals in life, now that the Michelin Guide is in Texas, one of my goals in life, I don't ever want to, I want to own a restaurant and just have a Michelin star. Like, I don't want to do anything in it. I just want to own it because, like, I just think it would be so cool, and I want to call it
yeah,
Leola's.
okay, okay. We can work on that. We can work on that.
Yeah, and I want it to be like super. Here, I can just talk to you about it because I wanted to talk to you about it one day anyway. I want to make it. This sounds so crazy, but I want to make it like fine dining soul food, if that makes sense.
It does. There's one guy that's kind of doing some fun stuff out in the Bronx that's doing more of that.
Really?
But I haven't heard of a guy in Texas or anyone really doing really good soul food. Where it's
like I mean,
that slap.
Like fine dining. I'm talking like fine dining. Like I'm talking like Tatiana level fine dining.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could work on that.
Yeah.
We could work on that.
Yeah. I don't honestly, I don't care about the Michelin star. I just think it'd be cool just to feed people, especially because our grandmother, she loved to cook, and she passed away. She passed away when we were much younger, but like she just loved to cook, and I've always been inspired by that because I love to cook, and I've always been inspired by that fact that she our grandfather left a legacy being who he was in Memphis, and she didn't get to leave that legacy. So I'm like, why can't we, if I got the ability to, just
why not? We can.
Why not? Fuck it. Why not? Let's do it. That's that. So yeah. Yay. Dreams coming true. So Food Network. How does someone who has 3 restaurants, who's been all over, who's opened up Root of All Food, which is an amazing catering company in Los Angeles, catering with chefs and everybody, how do you go from that and then Poppy and Rose, Poppy and Seed to being one of the biggest stars on Food Network?
I wouldn't say I'm the biggest star on Food Network.
I said one of.
I'm barely getting my feet wet, but it's like I did one show, and of course they're like, go on Alex versus America, shot in LA. So it's like, okay, it's an easy thing to do. It's a 1-day shoot. And they go, oh, it's going to be brunch. I'm like, fine, brunch, whatever, not a big deal. So I do it. I go on, don't smile, just be myself and freaking just go crush food. Go crush it. And so I swept her in both of the challenges for brunch, and all the producers were like, okay, that was great. You won. And I'm like, yay, can I go to gotta go check in on the skater event that's going on right now, but it's all good. Yeah, it's cool. And they're like asking like, what other shows do you want to be on and things like that. And I was just like, none of them. I didn't really have any, didn't really have a huge interest in, doing TV like that. And they're like, what about, guys, grocery games? I'm like, I am not running around a grocery store. That's not my steez. It's not my, I don't want to do it. And what about this? What about that? And I was like, no, they're like the only legit show that I would want to be on. I was like, I'll do Tournament Champions. And so they kept hounding me for like a year. And I was just like, nope, didn't work in the schedule and other stuff. Same thing with like Top Chef, got through like all the casting and was about to sign the contract. And then I got massive like catering events going on. I was like, I can't disappear for 2 months when I could go make this real money. That's guaranteed money. So we pulled out of that. And then randomly they called like a year and a half after I did Alex versus America. And we're like, okay, we have an opportunity for you to, do some play-in rounds for Tournament of Champions. I was like, okay, cool. It's the show I wanted. I have to play in like a wild card spot. I was like, not a problem. I'll do it. And so that was on season 5. And I, battled through 2 rounds to get into the next round. And, survived the first round And then I won the second round that got me into the actual bracket for season 5 of Tournament Champions. And then after that, it was all she wrote. Then it was just like, can you do this? Can you go on Guys Grocery Games? And I was like, fine. I actually like Guy Fieri. He's really freaking dope. And the people that put on his shows for Tournament of Champion, Lando Entertainment is just like, they're easy to work with. They understand who we are. They treat us with like actual, like, you're a celebrity chef, and they treat you well. They send cars to pick you up, and they pay
nice.
you. And, so it's a nice experience. And I'm like, oh, I like this. And then I also they got that bug for like, I don't like losing. I'm very competitive. So
Facts.
now I'm like, shit, I lost, but that was fun. Now I have to go do it again to get the adrenaline rush of being on that show and being like challenging yourself as a chef to be like, what can you create? What kind of random things are they going to throw at me this time? So now it's just like, I'm on their radar. I'm in that little circle, and, it just happened to be that way. And I was just like, I make good TV. I have fun, it's like when you have, I'm the quiet one in the relationship with Queenie, and she's like the more outgoing, let's dance, let's sing, let's party. Yeah. And so then when you put the two of us on a camera together, it's like, oh shit, they cook and they have fun. So now it's like double teaming them with good time. So it's like we've done 4 shows last year together. And so it's just like, now it's like, as a team, as a married couple, we go on and do different things. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. It's just part of it. Sometimes it's harder to take the loss. It's easier to take the wins, but it's just fun.
Of course. Would you ever, if ever pitched, would you ever do your own TV show?
Depends on what it is, like, I think Queenie wants to do it more than I do.
She does.
So, it's there's been some talk about trying to figure out what would that show look like, and how would we pitch it, and what would be the concept of it. So, I wouldn't say it's too far fetched that, in a couple of years you might see an actual show, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we keep doing what we do.
Hey, I like it. I hope it happens. I like seeing my family win. Hey, also the whole competitive thing, I just think that is a Reed family, like, just, it's a blessing and a curse, because I hate losing. I hate it so much.
Yes, it's just hard. You're like, but I cooked this amazing dish and it still didn't win. And you're like, I don't know. What were you looking for? I just have to remind myself, food is very subjective. What I think is amazing, someone else can think completely opposite, because, their heritage, the way they grew up, just their palate in general. Yeah. And so food is subjective. So whenever you get judged by these people, it's like, you take it hard, but you don't take it that hard. But you're like, you can't handle spice, like, you've never had someone cook you real food where it's actually like layers on layers of flavors, and you like that vanilla kind of like chef that just like, oh, I like this. It's spicy single note. I'm like, spicy single note is not an enjoyable dish. That's called palate fatigue after the third bite. But okay, that's what you want. Be my guest. So,
hey, if that's what you want, do your thing. That's just not for me though. No. Yeah. So, okay, cool. How do you come up with dishes? Like, take me inside the mind of a chef, into that creative mind. Like, what's that process like?
For us, it's really about, like for Poppy and C, it's like the mantra that we say, it's always something familiar with a twist, right? Like I've gone to high-end restaurants and you're like reading the menu and you're like, I don't even know what the hell I just read. And I'm not quite sure what's going to come out. So for us, it's like, we want to give you a surprise still. So like everything that you read on the menu, you're like, cool, I understand what he's saying on the menu. And then when it comes out, it's always like, yes, it's what I thought it would be, but it's completely different because we put our own take and spin on it. Whether it's, just the flavor profiles, the acidity, sweet, salty, textures that we develop and layer into a dish. And we just work really hard at figuring out how do you make something craveable? How do you make that lasting memory? So like pasta wise, it's like, taking something very authentic that everyone's familiar with, but
Mm-hmm.
then doing not so traditional where it's like, it's just a bolognese sauce and pappardelle that you could get at anyone's house. We still make a great bolognese, but we figure out ways to make it a twist, whether it's, a duck ragu and
Mm-hmm.
other different meats and things like that. So it's something familiar with that twist that always like, oh, it tastes like you have an old Italian grandma back there making your pastas, but it's not. It's this black
Yeah.
man, you know? So, it's like that. And, it's just like 20 years in the industry, being able to go out and eat at really nice restaurants, being surrounded by other really talented chefs, and just keeping like for me, it's like I'm constantly buying new cookbooks and reading, finding things and articles online to further my education. Because there's just so many different techniques that have changed over the years that when I went to school, it was this, and now it's completely different. So it's just a lot of, trial and error. Not everything I put out on the first round makes it onto the menu. And I'll come back to it and
Yeah.
refine it and tweak it. But it's like I can basically create menus in my head and be like, I've tasted everything. I understand what they are, and really start writing a menu and then go into the kitchen and just be like, here's 7 different sauces and I'm making one dish. And I'm like,
Wow.
which of the 7 sauces is really going to make the scallop sing? Which 2 work really well together? One for texture and flavor and consistency. And you start just building up this dish to this like perfect pyramid. And you're like, here's the fundamentals of our cooking technique. So then here's the unique things. Here's the twist. Here's the umami bomb. And you just start layering all these things without having to be like, there's so many components because, I worked for a chef where it's like 14 components on one dish. That's crazy.
Insane.
It was a delicious dish, but it's freaking crazy. It took an army just to produce that one dish. Versus here, it's much more like we'll take 5 days to do like a pastrami short rib where we brine it for 5 days and then smoke it for almost like 18 hours. And it's delicious, but it took us 6 days to produce it.
Right.
Now, execution wise, it's really simple. Heat it up, glaze it, and serve it with a brown butter carrot mash. And it's just simple, delicious smoked meat. And you're like, cool. But it took you 6 days to get it off of you. And you're like, that's fine.
Right.
I can figure it out that cycle to keep that on the menu. And so it's like we go really prep heavy on our menus to really be able to be like, whether you're fermenting for umami flavors, whether you're using dried mushrooms, we sneak in a lot of like, it's really easy for Asian ingredients to have that natural umami that you want in dishes that you're like, oh yeah, we use white soy for different things. We use different honeys because, California has like eucalyptus honey and it has a completely different flavor, and we're brushing that on our duck and we're grilling over open charcoal. And so we're doing all these different techniques to be able to really give you something that's different that you wouldn't see all the time in most restaurants. Yeah. And it's just like, that's the way my brain works. And it's like, have fun with it. Have fun, be creative, and have fun. Make it look like an art piece, but still delicious to eat.
Absolutely. There's a book by Austin Kleon. It's in more respectiveness to like photography, but it's called Steal Like an Artist. Do you ever feel that certain chefs, not yourself, but maybe possibly other chefs, they take elements of other dishes and then they steal those components and then they try and repackage them as like an entirely new dish?
Oh yeah, look at that's food has been around for a very long time. So it's like when you think about like Italian food, Chinese food, there's a lot of culture and heritage behind it. Now it's just about how do you reinvent the wheel? You don't have to reinvent the wheel as a chef. You kind of take like, yeah, I'll go to a restaurant. Like we went to Mexico City and ate at some really amazing restaurants. And I was just in love with like chilies for that entire year. I was fermenting chilies. I was making hot sauces. I was making different styles of moles. And you take different aspects from wherever you go, wherever you eat and travel, and you kind of bring that back and you try and apply that to what your restaurant is doing. And sometimes it works really well. Other times, you're like, I love that flavor. I just can't pull it off here. And so, I don't think it's necessarily stealing. I think it's the biggest form of flattery when you can pull off a dish where you're like, oh, I know where you got that from. Like there's a restaurant when I was working with Nancy, we did a charity event up north, and the chef literally didn't even care. He literally put on a post-it, "Thank you so much for your dessert. It is one of our top selling," and put it on a post-it on a dessert. And it was the same butterscotch boudin that she makes at Osteria Mozza that he made at his restaurant. And literally just was like, "Yep, I took your dish because it's that fucking good." And it's
Yeah.
like, what are you gonna say as another chef? Don't do that. No, it's like, just be like, "I know it's good. Thank you. Thank you." The sheer fact that you want to make the exact same dish, which it was good. It wasn't the same. Wasn't exactly the same. Wasn't as good. But,
Okay.
it's like, you just take it as, yeah, I get it. It's flattery. It's like, you could be that chef that gets all pissed off and mad that someone ripped off something from you, or you could be the chef that goes, yeah, I'm doing what I need to do, and people are trying to copy the style and the flavors that I put together. I'll take
Yeah.
that.
I think that's the most sincere, like you said, the most sincere form of flattery is to just basically rip off what you're doing. But I mean, like, so for you, everybody on Food Network always says you're like the chicken and waffles guy. Like, chicken and waffles, there's only so much you can do, but like the way that you do it at Poppy and Rose is beyond. I mean, I just don't understand.
It's just, if you're when you have a fine dining background, you're gonna figure out the best way to make a brunch menu sing. So when we do fried chicken, it's like, how do you are you brining it? You dry rubbing it? What's your thing? How long are you brining it for? What goes into your dredge? Is it a wet dredge, dry dredge? What temp are you frying at? Is it bone in, boneless? And so we just came up with this perfect combination of like, it's crunchy, it's brined all the way through because we let everything brine for like 48 hours, buttermilk brine. And then the dredge is just like, how many spices do you want to put in there? And I'm like, as many as it takes to make this thing just pop. So it is a massive laundry list of different dry spices that go into our dredge. And then it's just the way we dredge it and fry it low and slow
Yeah,
till golden brown. And then for the waffles, like, I wanted something unique. Everyone can make a Belgian waffle. I decided to develop a brown butter waffle that just has some really intense nutty flavor to it that just, you smell it and you're just like, this is not like a normal Belgian waffle, but it is crispy, fluffy on the inside, and to die for.
it's so good. Like I'm just one of the I'm just tasting it now. And the other thing, you used to have shishito peppers at Poppy and Seed.
Yeah.
Oh, that, and then you had like it was the whatever the last time I was there in 22, you had it was like a raspberry mousse kind of thing with like some white cloud type foamish thing. It was so good. I dream about that thing all the time.
Well, that's the
I'm
goal,
so
right?
serious.
Something as a restaurant you want to do, craveable. I want you to come back. I want you to have like that memory of me, like, because it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of restaurants that don't, like, you're feeding people just because it's like mass produced food, and then there's nothing craveable about it. You're just eating it because it's substance. Versus, especially for Seed, it's about the experience, the memories you make with us, and just in the joy that we get to bring to you, whether it's a sad moment and we kind of bring you up from that to a joyous occasion of anniversaries and birthdays and things like that. And so it's just like, that's why I love our industry, how we get to be around for all aspects of life, the good, the bad, the ugly. And most of the time it's always an enjoyable experience, and
For
it's
sure.
uplifting to see those people.
For sure. Would you classify Seed as a fine dining restaurant?
I would say for the terms of Orange County wise, we would be considered fine dining. For Orange County, for LA, would be considered like casual fine dining if we were in LA. The goal here was to make something like approachable, where it feels like you're coming more into someone's house. It's very warm and inviting. And the ethos that we try and preach is like, we want to cook like we're Michelin. We want to give service like we're Michelin. We want to take that stigma of pretension out of fine dining
Mm-hmm.
where you can scare certain diners away from a restaurant because you're like, well, I've never eaten at that level. And it just seems like they're very snobby and stuck up and they're rude to us when I'm just trying to have a good experience. No, that's not what we do here. So we try and take that out of what we consider to be fine dining. It's like, you can come in here in jeans or shorts and be casual if you want. You can get dressed up in a nightgown or a ball gown and freaking a suit if you want. It's whatever you want to do. We can find a place for you.
Yeah. Would you ever open a fine, like a $200-300 cover table, like fine dining?
I would, I don't know if Orange County is ready for that, especially where we're at in Orange County. I think if you went to a higher end, more affluential neighborhood, potentially in LA or Orange County, they have, you got to have the clientele that wants to pay that high ticket. And
Mm-hmm.
not everyone wants to. And that's the beautiful part about Seed. It's like, you can do a $135 6-course chef tasting menu, or you can just come in and order a la carte, grab snacks and a drink and be out your way for like $30. So it all depends on what you're in the mood for here. You know, like I love doing chef tasting menus. That's why we run it here at Seed. But it's not like, you're still, either way you look at it, you're still going to come away with something delicious, regardless of what you order.
For sure. For sure. I love that. So what's next? What's next for the great chef Michael Reed?
No, I think like it goes back to like, I think we're calling out of the third restaurant that's in like San Pedro, right on the marina. And now it's just about like kind of refocusing, and really trying to be like, I threw it out there. We have conversations all the time. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to own a piece of land. I want to build a farm. And even if you get the land to build the farm and you're just running the farm, do that. Then you can build up, the restaurant, a small B&B or whatever you want to do. So I think it's just like really taking time to like search out what city location wise would be the ideal location for that. 2025, hopefully go win some more TV shows, and keep bolstering the name.
Yep.
We've been throwing it out there for like the latter half of like a year and a half of like, get a cookbook out. And Quinny has this whole like master plan in her head. I'm like, I've been stockpiling all the recipes that we've been developing over that time and getting those refined. So it's like, that's probably in our near future. And then, we're also just looking to diversify, just still in the food scene, but like diversify a little bit more. I mean, like, can we get our dredge into a bag, onto a shelf at a right grocery store? We make these tapioca pearl chips that are like gluten-free and vegan that go with our ceviche, that are like, people like Mackenzie comes to the restaurant and just asks for like them to go as chips.
Yeah.
And so like, can we get those also in a bag and use some CPG marketing and things like that? And be like, okay, now we have that. We have like 3 different coffee rubs that we're probably going to be launching in the next month, in collaboration with our coffee company out here. So we got like the OG, that's like a perfect coffee rub, pork, steak, chicken, salmon, you name it. Then we made one that's more like a sweeter one for those people who are like, I don't want all that heat or spice, but it's a little bit sweet with coffee, great on like nuts and other stuff. And then we made like this fire bomb spicy coffee rub that I'm like, I love it. A little spicy for some people, but I love it. So like all those things, food and wine festivals, Miami, Hillsburg, we still do our charity runs for the station, do their event every year at the Hollywood Bowl, Get Hungry. So, it's always one of those things that TV will happen. We give back, and we have our major give backs coming up at the middle of the year again for all our nonprofits that we really support, and they just do great work, in childhood cancer, making sure kids have hot food in school and support after school. All the things that are near and dear to our hearts. So we still have all those going on every year that we love to participate in. And then the rest is, big dreams and see what happens, keep networking. and work hard.
That's it. That's all you can do. I got two more questions because when you were talking, I just thought of two more things. One thing, would you ever do the concept? You said you want to get a farm. Would you ever do the concept of like Blue Hill Farms up in New York, where I mean, obviously, I think they shut down the farm. I think Dan shut his farm. He didn't.
It's still, the farm is still there. The restaurant is still there. They're still
Okay.
doing like, that's some quality work. They're still doing quality work out there. You know, it's like, it's like, it's hard. It's one thing to run a farm and then associate it to a restaurant and have them both doing perfect things.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's getting back to like how we used to have to live, where it's like you grew your own food, or you know, you went to the farmer's market and picked up a lot of your stuff. I think that would be my next iteration as a chef, because it's like, yes, I have garden boxes here at Seed where I grow garnishes and other stuff, but you know, it would be nice to actually be like, oh, I grew a full crop of beets or baby carrots or Brussels sprouts. And, you know, it's be like, these are from our farm. And yeah, you're still going to have to subsidize and find a local butcher and things like that. But it would be something that's like, I would enjoy that. I would continue to be learning and, you know, growing as a chef to be like, okay, we grew this. How do you utilize 100% of that and turn it into something beautiful and have people pay for it? You know, so I think.
But wouldn't that take you years though to grow? Like to grow avocados, I've heard it takes between 10 and 15 years to grow from a seed to a massive avocado tree. Wouldn't it take you a long time to plant, harvest, or would you just take over in a pre-existing farm?
You know, like if you're looking at their long lead crops like avocado, nut trees, grapevines, things like that, you're better off trying to take over someone's farm that already has that. Um, if you're looking for quick crops, you can, like, everything's grows in season. So you're talking about kales, Brussels sprouts, that's more wintertime. And then when you get to summertime, it's more berries and other stuff. And you can rotate your crops and grow multiple crops that are quick growing, where you can get yields out in like 2 months or less. So it just depends on how much land you have. What do you feel like growing? And, you know, you could always do a mix of them. Like half of it I planted for an orchard, which, you know, in 5 years will start producing. But then I have the other half is doing quick crops of like lettuces and micros and other greens like that, and baby carrots. And you can turn those crops really quick.
Gotcha. That makes sense. My second question has to do with movie magic and TV. All the time, whenever it's the weirdest thing. Whenever you watch TV, you're finished cooking and they're like, "All right, let's taste." But that's not really how it works, right? You end up are the chefs eating, or the judges, not chefs, are the judges eating cold food?
So depending on what show it is, they all have their different protocols to how they eat. The Bobby Flay or Bobby Flay shows, they eat really quick. So you make your dishes, the food goes back, and they start eating right away. Mm-hmm. Chopped and other shows, there's a little bit longer of a drag in between, you know. So yes, the food is, you can keep it warm, you can put a close over, you can keep it cold. It all depends on what style of food you made. But you know, there is TV magic happening constantly.
Yeah, because I mean, I always found it weird, like watching Master Chef and Gordon Ramsay. I mean, I know that show takes hours to film because you're like, there's 20 some odd people in the room. Like, and he's like, "Oh, your dish is cold." I'm like, "What? Of course it's cold. There's no way."
Yeah. You know, it happens, you know, like, and sometimes like they try, like they get judges and they educate the judges not to, like, they're used to being like understanding this is not going to be piping hot. You know, it's not like going to a restaurant where I put the food out and you're like waiting for it. Cause you know, they got reset cameras. They got to get people off set. They got to exclude you from different areas and do a bunch of other stuff that has to happen in the TV world. But you know, like a lot of the times, like ex-competitors to old chefs like Nancy that just has a great palate, they understand what they're looking for. Is it seasoned well? Is it cooked right? Even if it's cold, like, I don't, like, as a chef, I don't really eat a lot of hot food, which is kind of weird.
Really?
Like, it's always like, no, it's like, oh, lunch is up. Okay, cool. Well, I'm still doing this. Okay, now I'm going to go eat this warm but cold sandwich. Okay, cool. I'm doing this now. And so it's like you're always constantly like, you're just kind of like, what food should taste like when it's warm. You know what food should taste like when it's cold. So it's like when you're a judge, you're kind of like, oh, yes, this is still piping hot, but it's really not. And yes, the texture is great. So there's a little bit of like fubbing and on that just because it's just, it's hard to get, 3 judges to 4 judges on a stage, get 4 plates to them, have them eat it quickly, then reset them, move cameras around, and get the next competitor to go up and have them taste it. So it's like, it's challenging, but they do it very well and they make it work.
It is all done with excellence and perfection. Now, I still can't believe that you don't eat hot food as a chef. Like, even in passing, that's wild to me, man. Sorry.
Look you're always moving. And it's like, think about it, I'm around food all day. So it's like, I'm tasting. And then it's like, okay, yeah, we put up a staff meal every day and it's delicious. And then I'm like, dude, I just tasted 20 different sauces and I'm not really hungry. And then if I do eat, then I want to take a nap, but I'm about to start dinner service. So usually I normally eat after dinner service, and, whether it's something from the restaurant or something they made at the house already, but it's an afterthought. It seems like
feeding your body. It's an afterthought. Who knew?
As a chef, coffee in the morning, piece of bread, keep it going.
Man, that is not a way to live. Sorry. That is not a way to live. All right. Let's wrap this thing up because I know you got to get ready for dinner service. If the people want to come and visit Poppy and Rose, Poppy and Seed, follow your food journey on any sort of socials, or even watch you on the Wonderful Food Network or anything else that you got going on in your life, tell the people how they get in contact with you or visit you.
So you can follow the restaurant at Poppy and Seed OC or Poppy and Rose LA, or you can follow me directly at Chef Michael Reed. You can make reservations on Open Table for both of the restaurants in downtown LA and in Anaheim. And then once you signed up for Open Table, we send out news blasts with upcoming, pasta classes, any prefix menus that we have going on. If you're looking to see me at any of the food festivals, we're always posting on our social on Instagram, and you can follow us there and you'll see all the updates and cool stuff that we keep up with.
I love it. I really appreciate you doing this. I know somebody out there just has like a creative mind for food because I've been asked to have chefs on. So I know someone out there is just geeking. They're like, yes, I'm learning stuff. I know this is going to help somebody.
Definitely. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Everybody, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. We'll see you later. Peace.
Have a good one.